The Romulans' green blood would soon decorate the space station walls if they dared provoke the humans of the Arcadia colony. Gabriel Gray, the sole human mechanic amongst 5,000 Romulans on Zethus Prime Station, crouched by a crackling plasma conduit. The sheared metal edge of the open maintenance hatch dug into his shoulder as he reached deep into the circuit housing, nimble fingers working to strip and splice frayed wires. Sparks spat angrily, singeing his knuckles. "Those human colonists on Arcadia have been thriving unchecked for too long," a guttural Romulan voice growled from an adjacent corridor. "High time we put them in their place." Gabriel froze, ears perking up. He straightened slowly to avoid clanging his head on the conduit casing and causing a ruckus. "Indeed," a second Romulan agreed smugly. "Our warships will make short work of their meager defenses. They will regret settling so close to the Star Empire." Heavy boots clomped past Gabriel's position as the Romulans strode away, still conversing. "I'll ready my unit to deploy within the hour," the first voice belonging to Commander Torak declared confidently. "We will wipe the human infestation from the planet and claim it for the Empire. It will be a glorious victory." Gabriel gritted his teeth, a flash of rage searing through him. 200 innocent human lives, snuffed out on a cruel Romulan whim, all because they dared to seek independence on a remote world. He yanked his hands from the gutted plasma conduit, mind racing. He had to warn them, had to give his fellow humans a fighting chance. Hastily resealing the maintenance hatch, Gabriel speedwalked as casually as he could manage back to his Spartan quarters. The Romulans would see him as a traitor for this. He'd be executed without hesitation if caught. It didn't matter. He'd never felt at home among the Romulans' austere culture and cold indifference. This was his chance to make a difference. Snatching up his few belongings, Gabriel stuffed them into a satchel. A disruptor pistol, an illicit computer uplink, a couple ration packs. It would have to be enough. He had no idea how a lone human could hope to escape a high-security Romulan space station and cross light years of space to warn a colony. The Arcadian colonists would all die if he failed or took too long. But he had to try. For the first time in his life, Gabriel Gray had a purpose. The Romulans wanted to provoke a war with humanity. They would quickly learn to regret that arrogance. He would make damn sure of it. Gabriel's fingers flew across his portable terminal, lines of code scrolling by at a dizzying pace. He uploaded his program into the station's network, masking the intrusion with a flurry of false data. Sweat beaded on his brow as he watched the progress bar inch towards completion. Just as the hack deployed, alarms blared through the corridors. Red lights flashed. Romulans shouted in the distance, heavy boots pounding away from the docking bays. Gabriel peeked out. The cargo hold of a small freighter sat unattended, ramp extended. He sprinted for it, lungs burning. He dove behind a stack of crates just as a guard glanced back. The ship lurched as it detached from the station. Gabriel held his breath, waiting. A Romulan marched down the ramp, disruptor rifle shouldered. The guard swept his piercing gaze across the hold. Gabriel shrunk further into the shadows. The guard grunted and retreated. Gabriel exhaled shakily. Step 1 complete. Now to contact the colony. He pried open a bulkhead panel, examining the tangle of circuitry. His engineer's mind clicked into overdrive, tracing pathways and junctions. There. The comms system. He spliced and rewired, digits a blur. His makeshift transmitter crackled to life. He typed out his warning, fingers trembling, and hit send. Now they would know what was. "Attention, cargo transport," a harsh voice cut in over the ship-wide comms. "You are ordered to return to Zethus Prime Station immediately. Repeat, return to Zethus Prime." Dread knotted in Gabriel's gut. They'd intercepted his message. He was out of time, out of options. Oh, not quite. One final gambit. One insane roll of the dice. He emerged slowly from the crates, hands raised. The Romulan crew whirled, disruptors trained on him. A grizzled captain, face etched with battle scars, stepped forward. "You have 10 seconds to explain yourself, human," the captain growled. before I blast you out the airlock." "Captain Keras, I presume?" Gabriel said, voice surprisingly steady. "I have information you need about the humans. I'll share it in exchange for passage to Arcadia." "And why should I listen to your lies?" Keras snarled, but a flicker of curiosity lit his eyes. "Because," Gabriel pressed on, "I know things about human capabilities that would make your attack unwise. I can help you, if you help me." Keras narrowed his eyes, considering. The disruptor never wavered. "We'll see about that," he said at last. "Start talking, human, but if I suspect you're stalling—" The threat hung unspoken. Gabriel met Keras's glare unflinchingly. He began to share scraps of intel, parceling it out. Keras's brow furrowed. He motioned for Gabriel to continue. And so the dangerous dance began, a tightrope walk over a chasm. Gabriel spun half-truths and implications, stoking Keras's doubts. He pictured the Arcadia colonists scrambling to erect defenses, shuttling civilians to bunkers, buying time with his desperate bluff. The blue-green surface of Arcadia swelled in the viewports, showdown approaching. Gabriel clenched his fists, hoping against hope his gamble would pay off. If not, he didn't want to imagine the alternative. The green glow of the planet Arcadia filled the viewports of the cargo ship as it slipped into orbit. Gabriel sat hunched over the control console, fingers flying across the interface. Behind him, Captain Keras paced the cramped cockpit, his face like a thundercloud. A blaring proximity alert shattered the tense silence. Gabriel's head snapped up. The blood drained from Keras's face. "It's the IRW Khazara," Keras said grimly. "A Romulan warship. We're being hailed." The view screen crackled to life, revealing a severe Romulan woman with sharp features. Her eyes were cold as a winter star. "Cargo transport. This is Sub-Commander Vriha of the Imperial Romulan warship Khazara," she snapped. "You have deviated from your registered flight path. Explain yourself." Keras stepped forward, squaring his shoulders. "Sub-Commander, this is Captain Keras. We were forced to alter course to avoid an ion storm. Our sensors—" "Enough!" Vriha cut him off with a slash of her hand. "I can see your sensor logs, Captain. There is no ion storm. You will prepare to be boarded for inspection. Khazara out." The screen went dark. Keras slammed a fist against the bulkhead, making the deck plates shudder. He whirled on Gabriel. "This is your doing, human," he snarled. "You've doomed us both with your treachery." Gabriel met his glare unflinchingly. "No, Captain. I'm trying to save lives, Romulan and human alike, and I need your help to do it." "Help you?" Keras laughed bitterly. "I should hand you over to Vriha myself." "Then you'll die with me," Gabriel said quietly. "She won't spare you for aiding a human saboteur, but if we work together, we might still have a chance." Keras's jaw worked as he wrestled with indecision. The ship shuddered as the Khazara locked a tractor beam onto its hull, reeling them in. "What did you have in mind?" Keras said at last, his voice tight. Gabriel turned back to the console, fingers racing once more. "I'm going to overload the Khazara's disruptor banks, cause a power surge. It'll be chaos over there." "So that's suicide," Keras hissed. "Their security protocols have a vulnerability in the tertiary backup system," Gabriel finished. "I studied their tech manuals for years, trust me." Keras hesitated a moment longer. Then he stepped forward, adding his own codes to Gabriel's efforts. The console beeped and chirped as they probed the warship's defenses, seeking the chink in its armor. On the Khazara's bridge, warning klaxons blared as disruptor relays overloaded, filling the air with the stench of burnt isolinear chips. Vriha barked orders as her crew scrambled to contain the damage. In that instant of pandemonium, a tiny shuttle burst free from the cargo ship, streaking towards Arcadia's blue-green oasis. Gabriel and Keras were jostled in their seats as the craft knifed through the atmosphere, heat shields aglow. The human colony materialized beneath them, a huddle of prefab shelters and hydroponic domes. Figures scurried between buildings, the glint of weapons in their hands. They had received Gabriel's message. They were ready to fight for their homes. The shuttle touched down in a spray of dirt. The hatch hissed open. Gabriel and Kyrus emerged slowly, hands raised, as a dozen rifle muzzles trained on them. A tall man with steel-grey hair and a laser scar down one cheek stepped forward. His uniform bore the insignia of an Earth Defense Force colonel. He kept his weapon leveled at Kyrus's chest. "Gabriel Gray, I presume," Colonel John Hawkins said curtly. "You've got about 10 seconds to explain why I shouldn't ventilate your Romulan friend here." "He's no friend of mine," Gabriel replied. "But he is an ally. He helped me escape to warn you, and he knows the Romulans' plans." Hawkins' eyes narrowed suspiciously. Kyrus met his gaze steadily, unflinching. "Colonel, we don't have much time," Gabriel pressed. "The Romulans will regroup quickly. We need to prepare the colony's defenses. Please, let me help." A long tense beat, the whine of capacitors powering up. Then Hawkins lowered his rifle. He jerked his head towards the cluster of buildings. "Come with me," he said gruffly. "Both of you. We'll see if you're as useful as you claim." Gabriel exhaled shakily. He fell into step beside Kyrus as they followed Hawkins into the heart of the colony. All around them, grim-faced men and women hefted weapons and erected barricades. A palpable current of fear and determination crackled in the air. Hawkins led them into the command center, a cramped room dominated by a holoprojector table. A three-dimensional map of the colony and its surroundings hovered above the grid. Red dots denoted sensor contacts in orbit, Romulan ships holding position, for now. Gabriel studied the readouts, his engineer's mind clicking into high gear. He gestured to the perimeter. "We should deploy remote sensor drones here, and here. Early warning system. I can rig up a network using the colony's spare parts. We'll know the moment the Romulans make a move." Hawkins nodded curtly. "Do it. What else?" "Disruptor turrets," Kyrus chimed in. "Automated, placed at these choke points. We can funnel their ground troops into kill zones. I know their standard invasion patterns." Gabriel raised an eyebrow, impressed. Kyrus shrugged. "If I'm to be a traitor, I might as well commit fully to the role," the Romulan said dryly. A ghost of a smile flickered across Hawkins' weathered face. "Maybe you're not so bad after all, Pointy." They worked feverishly, the hours blurring together. Gabriel's hands flew as he assembled sensor modules, repurposed power couplings, jury-rigged targeting interfaces. Beside him, Kyrus pored over tactical maps, marking likely Romulan transport sites and approach vectors. All throughout the colony, a similar scene played out. Farmers and doctors, teachers and miners, all united in a desperate bid to save their home. They dug trenches, piled sandbags, charged weapons that had not been fired in anger for generations. Grim determination etched on every face, the knowledge that they were all that stood between their loved ones and the wrath of the Romulan Star Empire. Gabriel paused amidst the controlled chaos, looking out over the sea of humans working shoulder to shoulder. Something stirred within him, an unfamiliar warmth. All his life he had been an outsider, a human among Romulans, tolerated but never truly accepted, a misfit even among his own kind, too restless and reckless to fit in. But here, now, he felt a sense of belonging, of purpose. These were his people, this was his fight, and he would be damned if he let the Romulans take it all away. But as he watched the red dots on the sensor grid wink out one by one, replaced by the green of confirmed targets, Gabriel felt a cold knot of dread settle in his gut. The real test was about to begin. The Romulans were coming, and the fate of the Arcadia colony would be decided in fire and blood. Gabriel gripped the edge of the holoprojector table, his knuckles white. Beside him, Kyrus let out a low growl of challenge. On the other side, Hawkins squared his shoulders, a lifetime of soldiering etched in every line of his face. Together they watched the approaching storm, ready to meet it head-on, for their homes, for their freedom, for the future of all humankind. The battle for Arcadia was about to begin. The air crackled with phaser fire as the Romulan dropships descended like a swarm of angry hornets. Gabriel crouched behind a makeshift barricade, His disruptor pistol clutched tightly. The sensor drones had given them precious seconds of warning, but it wasn't enough. Not against the Romulan war machine. The automated turrets opened up, spitting streams of plasma into the dropship's hulls. 2 went down in flames, but the rest scattered, disgorging squads of heavily armed troops. "Here they come," Keris shouted, leveling his assault rifle. Gabriel rose and fired, the disruptor beam searing through a Romulan's chest. Beside him, the human militia let loose a volley of rifle fire, felling several more invaders. But the Romulans kept coming, heedless of their losses. They advanced with ruthless efficiency, disruptors spitting death. Gabriel and Keris fought back to back, covering each other's blind spots. Gabriel's pistol whined as it overheated, forcing him to duck down and let it cool. Keris tossed him a spare power cell. "Just like old times, eh?" The Romulan grunted, popping up to snap off a burst from his rifle. Gabriel slammed the fresh cell home and resumed firing. "Let's hope this ends better than old times." All around them, the militia fought with grim determination. They knew every inch of their colony, every hiding spot and choke point. They made the Romulans pay for every meter of ground. But the Romulans kept coming. In the heart of the battle, Commander Trenak surveyed the chaos with cold eyes. These humans were putting up more of a fight than expected. He barked orders into his comm, rallying his troops for a coordinated push. Gabriel saw the Romulans falling back, regrouping. He knew what was coming next. "Colonel," he shouted over the din, "they're going to hit the main settlement. We have to stop them." Hawkins nodded grimly. "I have an idea, but it's risky." "Risky is all we've got," Gabriel said. They gathered a handful of volunteers, Keris among them. The plan was simple but daring: infiltrate the Romulan command post and sow chaos from within. They moved like ghosts through the colony's back alleys, dodging patrols and sentry drones. Gabriel clutched his pistol in one hand, a jury-rigged hacking device in the other. At the perimeter of the Romulan base, Gabriel set to work, his fingers flying over the device's interface. Keris and the others stood guard, rifles at the ready. "I'm in," Gabriel whispered. With a few deft keystrokes, he unleashed his virus into the Romulan network. Alarms blared, consoles flickered and died. Confused shouts echoed from within the base. "Nice work," Hawkins said. "Now let's hit them while they're scrambling." They charged into the base, weapons blazing. The Romulans, caught off guard, fell back in disarray. Gabriel and his team pressed forward, sabotaging equipment, cutting lines of communication. In the command center, Gabriel came face to face with Sub-Commander Vriha. Her disruptor was leveled at his chest. "You," she hissed, "the human saboteur." "Vriha," Gabriel said evenly, "this invasion is a mistake. You're underestimating us." "Spare me your lies," Vriha spat. "Romulus will prevail." "At what cost?" Gabriel pressed. "How many lives lost on both sides?" Vriha's finger tightened on the trigger, but she hesitated, doubt flickering in her eyes. It was all the opening Gabriel needed. He dove aside as Vriha fired, the disruptor beam sizzling past his ear. He rolled and came up firing, the pistol kick slamming his wrist. Vriha staggered back, green blood seeping from her shoulder. Around them, the command center erupted into a firefight as Hawkins and the others burst in. "Set the charges!" Hawkins yelled, tossing satchels to his team. They worked frantically, rigging the power generator to blow. "Time to go," Keris shouted, laying down covering fire. They ran, racing the clock, as the Romulans closed in. The ground shuddered as they pelted across the battlefield, the shock wave of the explosion hot on their heels. Gabriel risked a glance back. The Romulan base was a smoking ruin, green flames licking at the twisted wreckage. A cheer went up from the human lines. "We did it," Keris said, amazement in his voice. "We actually did it." Gabriel clasped his shoulder. "We're not done yet." Across the battlefield, the Romulans were in full retreat, fleeing back to their dropships. The Khazara hung low in the sky, its hull pitted and scarred. The human colonists swarmed forth from their defensive positions, harrying the Romulans' withdrawal. Phaser beams and disruptor bolts crisscrossed the churned earth. Gabriel and Kyrus joined the pursuit, picking off stragglers. The taste of victory was sweet on Gabriel's tongue, mingled with the coppery tang of blood and ozone. As the last dropship limped into the sky, the colonists let out a ragged cheer. They had done the impossible, beating back the might of the Romulan Star Empire. But as Gabriel looked out over the scorched and blasted landscape, the bodies of friends and foes alike strewn across the ground, he knew their fight was far from over. The Romulans would be back, smarting from this defeat, hungry for vengeance. This was only the beginning. The battle for Arcadia, for the future of humanity on the galactic stage, had only just begun. Kyrus clapped a hand on Gabriel's shoulder, shaking him from his thoughts. The Romulan's face was streaked with grime and blood, but his eyes gleamed with fierce pride. "Not bad for a human," he said, a wry grin tugging at his lips. Gabriel laughed, the sound startling in the sudden quiet. "Not bad yourself, Pointy, for a Romulan." They stood side by side, human and Romulan, united by the bonds of battle. Above them the stars wheeled in their endless dance, cold and uncaring. But here on this small patch of hard-won ground, hope burned bright, the hope of a better tomorrow forged in the crucible of war. Gabriel hefted his pistol, ready for whatever came next. Come what may, they would face it together, for Arcadia, for humanity. For the dream of peace, hard-won and precious. But as the dust settled and the adrenaline faded, the daunting task of rebuilding loomed before them. The once thriving colony lay in ruins, buildings reduced to rubble, crops trampled and burned. The air hung heavy with the stench of death and the cries of the wounded. Gabriel and Kyrus worked side by side, clearing debris, erecting shelters, tending to the injured. They toiled from dawn to dusk, their hands blistered and their backs aching, but they pushed on, driven by a fierce determination to restore what had been lost. Colonel Hawkins organized the survivors into teams, assigning tasks and rationing supplies. Under his gruff but steady leadership, the colonists began to piece their lives back together. They salvaged what they could, repaired what was broken, mourned those who had fallen. Slowly, painfully, Arcadia began to heal. But even as the physical scars started to fade, Gabriel couldn't shake the feeling that their trials were far from over. He had seen the fanatical gleam in the eyes of the Romulan invaders, the unyielding resolve behind their attacks. This was not an enemy that would simply slink away after one defeat. His fears were confirmed when a long-range sensor drone detected an incoming ship. At first they dared to hope it might be friendly, a Federation starship perhaps, coming to offer aid and support. But as the vessel drew closer, its distinctive bird-of-prey silhouette became all too clear. "Romulans," Kyrus growled, his face darkening. "But not from the main fleet. That ship belongs to Commander Sailor." Gabriel tensed. He had heard whispers of Sela, a half-human, half-Romulan operative known for her ruthless cunning and unwavering loyalty to the Empire. If she was here, it could only mean one thing. "She's come to finish what Trenak started," Gabriel said grimly. "To wipe us out once and for all." Kyrus nodded, his jaw tight. "Sela is ambitious, driven. She'll see our victory as a personal insult. She won't stop until she's crushed us beneath her heel." Gabriel's mind raced, calculating odds, weighing options. They had barely survived the last Romulan assault. They couldn't withstand another, not in their weakened state. Not against a foe as implacable as Sela. "We need to neutralize her ship before she can deploy her troops," he said at last. "Sabotage it from within. Take out their weapons, their shields, their command structure." Kyrus raised an eyebrow. "A suicide mission?" "For anyone else, maybe," Gabriel replied. He managed a tight smile. "But not for us, not after everything we've been through." Kyrus met his gaze, understanding passing between them. They had forged an unbreakable bond in the crucible of battle, human and Romulan, united by a shared purpose. If anyone could pull this off, it was them. They slipped out of the colony under cover of darkness. a single cloaked shuttle skimming low over the rugged terrain. Gabriel's heart pounded as they approached Sellers' looming warbird, its hull bristling with disruptor arrays and torpedo launchers. One wrong move, one stray sensor ping, and they'd be vaporized before they could even blink. But Gabriel had spent years studying Romulan security protocols, probing for weaknesses, mapping out vulnerabilities. He guided their shuttle through a fluctuating gap in the warbird's shields, matching their cloaking frequency to the ship's own. They docked in a shadowed maintenance bay, the hatch hissing open on an empty corridor. Gabriel and Kiris crept forward, disruptors at the ready, every nerve thrumming with tension. "Main weapons control is 3 decks up," Gabriel whispered, consulting a stolen schematic on his wrist display. "We plant the charges there, then move on to the shield generator and the bridge." Kiris nodded curtly, his face a mask of grim determination. They moved swiftly, silently, taking out sentries with quick, brutal efficiency. The ship was running on a skeleton crew, most of its personnel prepping for the invasion groundside. But as they neared the weapons deck, a piercing alarm split the air. Booted feet pounded in the distance, shouts echoing off the bulkheads. They'd been detected. "Go!" Gabriel yelled, shoving Kiris towards the weapons room. "Finish the mission, I'll hold them off." He spun, firing wildly down the corridor, driving the Romulans back behind a hail of disruptor bolts. He could hear Kiris working frantically behind him, attaching the explosive charges, splicing the detonator relays. But then a stun beam caught Gabriel square in the chest, sending him crumpling to the deck. Through a haze of pain, he saw Kiris dragged away by Sellers' guards, still struggling, still fighting to the last. Gabriel faded into blackness, his last thought a desperate prayer that Kiris would find a way to finish what they'd started. He woke to the sound of cruel laughter. Blinking away the fog, Gabriel found himself on the bridge of Sailor's ship, forced to kneel before the commander's throne-like chair. Kiris knelt beside him, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. "The saboteurs," Sailor drawled, her voice dripping with contempt. "Did you really think you could cripple my ship so easily?" She leaned forward, her eyes glittering with malice. "I should kill you both here and now, but perhaps you can still be of use. You will watch as I burn your pathetic colony to ash. You will live to see the folly of defying the Romulan Empire." "You won't win," Gabriel rasped, his throat raw. "Humanity will never submit to you. We'll fight you to the last breath." Sella threw back her head and laughed. "Such arrogance, such misplaced bravado. You humans are so predictable in your delusions of grandeur." She turned her gaze to Kiris, her expression hardening. "And you, traitor, you shame the Romulan people with your weakness, conspiring with the enemy, turning your back on your own kind." Kiris met her glare unflinchingly. "I fight for what I believe in, for honor, for loyalty. Concepts you've long forgotten, Sella." Sella's eyes flashed with rage. She raised her hand, ready to deliver a vicious backhand. But something in Kiris's face gave her pause, a flicker of recognition, of connection. "You," she whispered, her voice suddenly uncertain. "There's something about you, something familiar." Kiris held her gaze steadily. "I am Commander Kiris of the warbird Decius, declared killed in action 27 years ago." Sella reeled back as if struck. "Kiris, but that's—" Her voice dropped to a choked whisper. "Father?" The bridge fell deathly silent. Gabriel stared at Kiris in shock, trying to process this sudden revelation. Kiris himself looked shaken, his usual unflappable demeanor cracking. "My daughter," he said softly, wonderingly. "I thought I'd lost you forever." Sailor's face contorted in a maelstrom of emotions, anger, confusion, longing. Her hand drifted towards her disruptor pistol, but she made no move to draw it. Gabriel sensed the sudden shift in the air, the momentary hesitation. He caught Kiris's eye, saw the pain and conflict raging there. In that instant, he made his choice. He lunged forward, slamming into Sella with all his strength. They tumbled to the deck in a tangle of limbs, grappling for the disruptor. Gabriel wrenched it free, but Sella lashed out with a vicious kick, sending him sprawling. "Gabriel!" Kiris shouted. He surged to his feet, tackling Sella before she could regain her footing. The two Romulans struggled, locked in a desperate clinch. Gabriel staggered upright, his vision swimming. He saw Kiris grappling with Sela, saw the anguish and determination etched on the Romulan's face. In that moment, he understood what he had to do. "Kiris," he called out, "get clear." Kiris looked up, meeting Gabriel's gaze. A look of understanding passed between them. A look of gratitude, of respect, of friendship, forged in the fires of war. Kiris wrenched himself free from Sela's grasp, diving for cover. Gabriel raised the disruptor, aiming it squarely at the explosive charges they had planted. "For Arcadia," he whispered. "For humanity." And then he fired. The world dissolved in a roar of flame and thunder. The bridge buckled and burst, consumed by a searing maelstrom of heat and light. Gabriel felt himself flung backwards, engulfed by the firestorm, his body shattering like glass. But even as the darkness claimed him, he felt a swell of fierce, indomitable hope. Hope for Kiris, for the colony, for the future they had fought so hard to protect. Hope for the inextinguishable spark of the human spirit, forever rising from the ashes, forever pressing forward into the unknown. With his last breath, Gabriel smiled. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.